Ladies and gentlemen, the man from East Liverpool, Ohio, the legend, Ben Feldman, CLU.
Ben, you remember 1976 in Boston when we introduced the movie The Man from East Liverpool? One section in that film contained a live selling interview. Many here, I'm sure, have seen it. But today I think that the audience is in for a true close encounter, regardless of what part of the world they're from. Ladies and gentlemen, what we are about to do is truly international. We are going to dissect a section. But first, let us refresh your memory and run the film one more time, the section we are about to discuss. David?
Pete, you've been very successful and have built a company that's running quite a lot of money. Would you say if you pile up everything you had in a great big pile, that might get pretty close to that figure?
Well, that's what McCroken and you keep telling me. I guess so.
Well, and you're still running hard, I believe, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, if you're still running hard, then it's going to grow. The tax, by the way, on this, if something happened to you, would be this. Hard to believe it could be that much money. That means it's taking about half of everything you own and giving it to the tax collector. To give you just a bird's eye view of what I would try to set up for you, I'd set up the money for the tax collector, and then I'd set up a trust fund in that would pay out that amount per month, which after tax would net about this amount. Pete, I don't think Jane could get by on much less than this. Oh, she could get by probably on whatever she had to get by on. But if you want her to go on living as you've accustomed her to living, I imagine she'd need the bulk of that, wouldn't she?
Yeah, I suppose.
Well, you know, to do this, we've got to add something to your program.
I was afraid of that.
Well, see, it isn't that I'm creating a problem for you. Here's the guy that's creating the problem. There's the guy creating the problem. And frankly, that's what he's going to do. And to give you an idea that it's very real, there's an estate tax table. And take a look at where you are on the table. You get an idea of the tax on the estate. And it gets pretty rugged. And you'll get to a point where, gee, unless you make some provision beforehand, I don't know how you'd pay it. I don't know how I'd pay. I don't know how anybody.
Well, that's true. Then we have to have it. But we have to be pretty accurate here, too.
Well, yes, you do. But that figure, as you grow, see, that grows. And as we continue having inflation, that will grow. And so that's a forever changing figure. And the thing that happens, see, today you're insurable, and maybe tomorrow you're not. And so today, if you're insurable, let's do it today. See, I've got discounted dollars, and you'll have to have dollars. You'll have to have money. Yeah. And what you want to do is use an insurance dollar to pay what has to be paid because it is a discounted dollar. Why don't you let me pay the tax on your estate? And leave your total estate to your family.
Well, that'd be nice.
Well, if you...
If I can afford it.
Well, here, let me show you how maybe you can afford it. Now, there's a tax in your estate, Pete.
Boy.
A New York Life will pay that if your company will pay us that.
That's a lot of money, Ben. This is over and above what we're doing now?
It's over and above what you're doing now. But see, so is this over and above what you're doing now. Pete, if you relate this to this, do you notice it's less than 2% per year? If you'll find a little one, we'll find a big one. I'll pay the bill. I'll pay the bill. I'll pay the bill. I'll pay that if you pay that. If you don't pay this, and you don't have to, but if you say no, well, then we'll say no.
All right, let me say that first, members of the round table and guests, there are certain men in America that make America what it is. Most of America is not made up by the great big Fortune 500, but of the little companies, the mom and pop companies, where someone put all his money and all his time into an idea that he thought he could make grow. There's a lot of heartache that a man puts into making it happen that doesn't appear on a balance sheet. It represents the many moves, the many things he did down through the years, some of which worked out well, and some maybe not so well, but because he persevered, and because he believed in himself, and he knew that he could, and he knew that he would, he began to make money. But ironically, companies that make money and are growing never have money because they keep plowing it back in. It becomes brick, stone, steel. It becomes, call it an addition to the plant. So there's a constant strain to pay what must be paid and still keep something that you can keep plowing back in. This kind of a man, because he felt that he could and was willing to put his heart and soul into making it happen, you know, he actually did make it happen. And the company began to grow. And as it grew, you know what it did? It began to employ more people. In the town of Summitville, there's 160 people. That's all. When I pull into their parking lot, there's no place to park. They have over 500 employees. This man did make it grow. And the people that he employed built homes, began to raise families, paid taxes, added to the economy of the community, did a great deal for a great many. A man like this can, when he gets to a point where he has enough that he can live comfortably, call it quits. I don't have to do anything more. But you know, because he doesn't, and he continues growing and plowing back in, you know what he does? He makes America grow. These are the kind of men that make America grow. I met such a man and his brother a long time ago. They had a very small company, but it represented pretty much everything they had. I'm going to ask this man to tell you about his company, when he started, what happened during the years, where he stands today. I think he can do it much better than I. But I'd like to say that by plowing it back in, he built 2 factories. By plowing it back in, they acquired 15,000 acres of land in Ohio, in Iowa, in Nebraska. They're the 4th largest breeder of Angus cattle in America. They have ceramic tile distribution centers, frankly, all over the USA. This man has special feelings on the tax structure in this nation. Maybe he'll bring them out. Let me say again, men made and will make America whatever it's going to be. May I introduce my good friend, Pete Johnson, one of those very special men.
gentlemen, today, along with Gene, is Pete's 32nd wedding anniversary. We hope that you will never forget the day that you shared your views with 6,000 people from 45 countries, and we thank you for coming here.
Thank you.
Thank you. One thing, Pete, that Ben omitted in the introduction, what year did your dad started the tile business, which is the heart of your corporation, did he not?
Yes, that's right. My father started our company in 1922. It was a family brick business. My brother and I got involved in the company after World War II.
What year did you branch out into the cattle industry?
Well, that started about 1946, 47, after the war.
Pete, we're going to run that film again. And this time we are going to stop it and ask questions of Ben and yourself so that maybe we can dissect this interview and see the moods and reasons for the things that happen. David, would you roll the film, please? Don't be nervous, Pete.
I'm not nervous.
Don't be nervous.
Pete, you've been very successful and have built a company that's running quite a lot of money. Would you say if you pile up everything you had in a great big pile, that might get pretty close to that figure?
Well, that's what McQuilkin and you keep telling me, and I guess so.
Well, and you're still running hard, I believe, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, if you're still running hard, then it's going to grow. The tax, by the way, on this, if something happened to you, would be this.
Pete, you whistled. Were you surprised at the 54% figure?
Yes, I still whistle every time Ben walks in our office. You know,
I thought you went like this. Does your accountant and your lawyer not tell you about these figures?
Not really, and I suppose if they really tried, you at those stages, you really don't want to listen. We're busy making tile. You don't think about these things. Our accountants knew, yes, we have insurance, but Ben's the only guy I know that can come in and say, you know, you're going to die, and it'll make you look forward to the trip.
You know, Pete, it isn't quite that way. But you know.
Now you tell me.
Yeah, but you know, well, I never found a man that had a lease on life. And if you're going to spend all your life, and that's what you're doing, putting this together, let's look on down the road. And you're going to try to keep it together. What's the point in putting it together if you're going to let it fall apart?
Ben, we promised not to sell them today.
I don't need any more, man.
Can't resist. Ben, there's one thing that came out in our chats. Ben apparently sees you under favorable circumstances now, but was it always that way just at the beginning? I'd like to know, did you ever throw him out? Or?
No, we never threw Ben out, but I think...
Not in the night. Let me say that you threw me out, Pete, but you didn't throw me out physically.
Right. No, I think Ben did. Cooled his heels in our office for 4, 5, 6 years. Sometimes I felt we were almost rude to him. I was too busy. I didn't need insurance. I was young. I was vigorous. I didn't have time to monkey around with that stuff. But finally, Ben came in one time, and the thing that he threw on the desk and mentioned gave cause for my brother and me to, maybe for the first time, to get together with our accountants and lawyers and say, hey, is this guy for real? Turns out he was.
David, let's continue. Would you roll the film, please?
Hard to believe it could be that much money. That means it's taking about half of everything you own and giving it to the tax collector. To give you just a bird's eye view of what I would try to set up for you, I'd set up the money for the tax collector, and then I'd set up a trust fund in that would pay out that amount per month, which after tax would net about this amount. Pete, I don't think Jean could get by on much less than this. Oh, she could get by probably on whatever she had to get by on. But if you want her to go on living as you've accustomed her to living, I imagine she'd need the bulk of that, wouldn't she?
Yeah, I suppose.
Pete, this was before you visited New York. That's $6,000 a month.
Then go for it.
For you and Jean. But Ben, do you always propose a monthly suggestion to be covered? How do you decide at this figure?
This program, this particular part, started 5 years ago when $6,000 a month was livable. Now remember, that was net income. After taking out all the tax, it meant he had to have $8,000 to $10,000 a month. Times have changed since then, but it's important, I think, Pete, for a man to build enough income for his family so they can go on holding their head up high. Now, usually when a man falls apart, it's only a question of time until a company falls apart. And no one has a lease on life.
Here he goes again.
And so, Pete, I just wanted to make sure that what you wanted done would get done.
That's right.
The 6,000 figure, in other words, it seemed realistic to keep
Well,
your...
at the time, you know, he surprised me that day, just as I was, you know, I'm surprised today, some things, but you don't...
big one's coming.
Yeah, the big one's coming. No, those are unpleasant thoughts that, as a client, I'd say as a client, you don't think about those things maybe as much as we should. We're not trained to think that way. I think tile. I don't think insurance. I don't think trust funds. The only time this thing would come to fore in our operation were those times that Ben Feldman would call or stick his head in the door. Then we'd think about this.
David, film, please.
Well, you know, to do this, we've got to add something to your program.
I was afraid of that.
Well, see, it isn't that I'm creating a problem for you. Here's the guy that's creating the problem.
Pete, you just said you were afraid of that.
Right.
But the Uncle Sam picture made you laugh. Was that a good thing for Ben to have in that presentation? Is that shock treatment? Or?
Well, I think it's shock treatment to anyone in business. And in America, we have a very confiscatory, unfair tax situation that we must live with. You're not aware of that even when you're busy. You pay your taxes, but the coup de grace comes later. You can't afford to die. And that's where Ben came in.
And Pete, you know, you never have time. See, you never plan on dying. There are too many things you have to do tomorrow. One of them isn't planning on dying.
That's right.
And so you never think about this. And when I could get to you and show you, see, you don't have a lease on life. And it could happen to me or to you. And when it happens, and it's only a question of when, and when it happens, the cost of doing what has to be done will come from where?
It's a good question. It always has been a good question. Where does it come from?
Where does it come from?
That's right. But we do find it. In our case, as you well know, we've made this a part of our complete corporate operation. Our insurance program is very important because we're in that batch of, and there's a lot of us in this country that, in spite of our efforts, we were lucky. We grew, and we're too big to be small, we're too small to be big, and we end up with an estate problem. Now, you and I have talked many times, and we have with auditors and consultants. Sure, we could go public, would help solve the problem, but we're not large enough to go public. Everyone in our industry, which is a very small industry, the whole industry is $500, $600 million, and that's peanuts. Those companies in our industry who took the public route didn't cut the mustard. They're not here anymore. In fact, we're the last independent left in our industry.
You've got 5 children.
In fact, as Ben well knows, we've been, another possibility too is to sell it, which basically we don't want to, and until such a time Ben has taken care of the immediate problem. However, it's something that we look at, and I've been negotiating with a company where the 9th generation is now running that company from Germany. In their case, where they get penalized would if they try to get rid of their company. Here, you get penalized if you try to keep it. We don't like it.
All right, Pete, in your program, you see, what you do is you put in escrow enough money to pay what has to be paid.
Right.
And you do it now. It's 2%, 3%, 4% per year. It's reasonable, logical, doable. And you do it now. And something will happen somewhere down the road. And there's enough money sitting out here to pay what has to be paid.
Didn't this become a reality yesterday? You explained this morning, you had that feeling that the things that Ben just talked about gave you a feeling of confidence in your negotiations?
That's right.
Would you explain that?
Well, we know that we have this protection, which covers the ballpark now if we don't grow much more. However, in negotiation, it's a nice thing to have that package back there that you know when they come out with a special deal and telling you how things are getting bad, the mark and the dollar have changed, we could tell them to go to heck because we know at least what we had thanks to Ben. And we didn't have to compromise beyond that deal.
Go ahead.
What we do, we actually put money in escrow today for tomorrow. And Pete and his brother Fred were willing to go along with my suggestions, and we put enough money in escrow to do what has to be done. So Pete didn't have to take the sort of a price I don't know whether they were really willing even to give you that. They sort of postponed it. But nevertheless, you have a degree of independence because you created your own market for your part of the company.
We think that.
Thank you. David, would you mind?
The problem, and frankly, that's what he's going to do. And to give you an idea that it's very real, there's an estate tax table. And take a look at where you are on the table. You get an idea of the tax on the estate. And it gets pretty rugged. And you'll get to a point where, gee, unless you make some provision beforehand, I don't know how you'd pay it. I don't know how I'd pay it. I don't know how anybody...
Well, that's true. We have to have it.
Ben, Peter just got into what we know as a very defensive position when he sat with his arms across his chest and leaned back a little bit. What is your reaction in a sales interview? How do you handle that?
Well, you know, I'm reaching down into his pants or his pocketbook, and he's going to bust my arm. Because he's not going to let anyone do that. But I'm also highlighting a problem down the road that may destroy everything that he spent his life putting together. Now, there are many options. You can do nothing, or you can do something. The only way to be sure, no one has a lease on life, the only way to be sure, Pete, that there'll be enough money in escrow to do what has to be done is to let me highlight the problem, then put that amount of money in escrow.
See?
But I keep telling him there's a choking price, you know? When do we stop? Where can we go? How far? And that's why you fold your arms and think, golly,
start to choke.
Here comes Feldman again, hide your wallet, you know?
Pete, as long as you keep growing, you know what you're doing? You're taking dollars and you're locking them up. As long as you keep doing that, you'll make America grow. You'll make America grow, but you'll also lock up the dollars. Someday, someone, because of the tax structure we have in this nation, someone will have to unlock a pretty good chunk of those dollars that you locked up. So much so that whoever's left maybe can continue the company, maybe he can't.
The illustration, there you're in again. Did you have a feeling? Was there a feeling?
Same old story, same old story. I have to die to get it, and I don't like it.
But Pete, if you can't do it this way, see, if you can't do it with a discounted dollar, then you can't do it any way. You can't do it any other way. There's another name for it. They call it liquidation.
That's right.
But the props that Ben uses, he's very famous for. And you've had other salespeople say things about Ben. And
oh, yes, sure. You know, at the golf club at home, you always have insurance men friends, and they'll say, well, hell, I could do that for you. I say, yeah, I know you could, but you didn't.
Right on. Right on. With that, I'm going to roll the film.
Okay.
David?
Pretty accurate here, too. Well, yes, you do. But that figure, as you grow, see, that grows. And as we continue having inflation, that will grow. And so that's a forever changing figure. And the thing that happens, see, today you're insurable, and maybe tomorrow you're not. And so today, if you're insurable, let's do it today.
Pete, the word insurable, that point struck home with you?
Very much, and it should with everybody, and I'm sure it is a problem that all agents constantly think of. You know, when you have a crowd like this out here, there's about 20% based on national averages have one of the most common sickness in the United States today is a problem with alcohol. Now, my cruising of the Hilton halls and knowing that these men like me are salesmen, why our percentage is a little higher.
It's called occupational hazard.
It's an occupational hazard. I thank Ben because Ben often suggested to Fred and me, have a physical. Well, initially we thought, well, son of a gun, he just wants to sell more insurance. But then eventually, as we got to know each other over the years, no, Ben was interested in our well-being, and everybody should take physicals, but when you're busy, you don't. So I personally had a warning. I got a little blib on the liver. I had a lot of fun with the bottle. So I mentioned that to salesmen because it is a very easy, insidious, sneaky little deal that can come up and be a pitfall in a man's life that could wreck your insurability, can affect your heart. There's so many things, and I won't get into an evangelistic thing on alcohol. However, it is a very common trait with salesmen of all types. I feel fortunate that I caught that. And I find, too, that since I did, I found myself to be more alert, more creative, better able to do a job than I was the 10 previous years that this thing sort of snuck.
Pete, I think you're very brave and kind to share that with us. Ben, that's pretty basic selling using the medical. Do you always stress the medical point?
Well, you look good on the outside. How about the inside? You know, men work under stress. Men that are growing, all men that are growing, are working under some degree of stress. And sooner or later, they'll begin to fall apart a little bit on the inside. And get a medical periodically, and it'll tell you a little something about yourself. And I try to do this. And you know, furthermore, if a man will go that far with me and get the medical, and I'll tell him, I'll get you a commitment to underwrite where you are now and a little bit of tomorrow. And the odds are, if you go that far with the man and you can show him that there is a need for something a little more than where he was 5 years ago, the odds are that he'll listen. He might not say yes, but he'll listen. He'll listen. And I've got discounted dollars. They're pennies apiece.
Here he comes again.
Yeah. Ben never sold insurance. He's always selling dollars.
Fantastic. Okay, David, would you mind rolling again, please?
Got discounted dollars. And you'll have to have dollars. You'll have to have money. And what you ought to do is use an insurance dollar to pay what has to be paid because it is a discounted dollar. Why don't you let me pay the tax on your estate? And leave your total estate to your family.
Well, that'd be nice.
Well, if you...
If I can afford it.
Well, here, let me show you how maybe you can afford it. Now, there's a tax on your estate, Pete.
Boy.
A New York Life will pay that if your company will pay us that.
That's a lot of money, Ben. This is over and above what we're doing now?
That's over and above what you're doing now. But see, so is this over and above what you're doing now. Pete, if you relate this to this, do you notice it's less than 2% per year? If you'll sign the little one, we'll sign the big one. I'll pay the bill. I'll pay the bill. I'll pay the bill. I'll pay that if you pay that.
Did he pay it?
Go ahead and pay it. Pay it.
You know, Ben, as one of your great power phrases, how are you able to keep doing that repetitive phrase? Most agents couldn't. Would you analyze that for us, please?
The biggest sale that I make before I would call on Pete or any other man, the biggest sale I make is the one I make to myself. If I don't think that I have something that will really do for him what should be done, I'm not even going to call. And if I don't buy it, I can't sell it. Now, Pete had a problem. Very successful, making a lot of money, but he had no money. He was wrapping it up. And he had a private operation. He'd love to pass it on to his boys. But where are you going to get the kind of money you're going to need to pay what has to be paid? But Pete had a problem. I had the answer. And I was endeavoring to present to Pete or to anyone else that I've got a 2-cent dollar, a 3-cent dollar, a 4-cent dollar, a 5-cent dollar. At age 60, we've got a 6-cent dollar. Money today is 20%. I've got, you can buy my dollars for less than you can rent your dollars. So that I did have something for you. It wouldn't hurt you, it would help you. And I truly believe that.
Pete, do you remember the inventory of the distress, what you were thinking at that time when he showed you that the problem was and what the total of it?
Well, I think any small businessman, as mentioned before, if you're not cognizant of these facets of life, sure, when the tax man comes, that inventory out there is one thing, but when you pass out, why, it's distressed merchandise, and it may not be worth what the book says it is, but that's what the taxes are based on.
The tax one, dollar for dollar,
That's
distress
right.
guide takes a discount.
That's right.
You had some friends in your area, in your town, you were telling us about. Do you want to share that with us?
You know, I live in a small community of Salem, Ohio, about 20 miles from Summitville, where I used to live. I was born and raised there. But we had too many kids and had to move out of town. So but Salem, Ohio was a typical small mid-American good country town, 15,000, 16,000 people. We had 6 or 7 good major companies in that town, the Deming Pump Company, Mullins Manufacturing, Youngstown Kitchens, Universal, Elger Company. Now today, there's not one of those companies left with home ownership. They've all been into conglomerate, to absentee ownership, and frankly, they're not as good places to work as they used to be. They're not a part of a community, and the people working there, it's strikes, fights, new management. It's not like the old ball game, and I don't know if that's, frankly, I don't like it. I hope that I can keep my company from going that route.
Very good.
I think, Pete, what you do, you add a little something to America. It's people with an idea, and then all their heart and soul into the idea, and you make it grow, 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 and you employ more people. And you know, that's America. You have the freedom to do what you want to do. You can lock your money up and create employment for other people, and you make America stronger, you make America grow. You could have taken your money a long time ago and put it
Then
in.
you come.
Well,
Then I just get there and then Ben comes in and start all over again.
well, Pete, there's no point in locking it up.
All right.
If someday someone doesn't unlock it, and you can't cut the company in half, or you can't take out all the working capital. You've got to have something in escrow. And it's a premium on a policy. It creates the dollars in escrow. And no man has a lease on life. I hope you live 100 years.
So,
but nobody
You want to roll the film? Do you want me to roll the film?
roll the film.
Roll the film, David.
I'm gonna get my.
If you don't pay this, and you don't have to, but if you say no, well, then we'll say no.
See, we're talking about the wallet that you wanted to hide a minute ago, but the premiums, you ever feel overinsured?
Yes, we have, and frankly, Ben and I have had a lot of friendly arguments and conversations over the years on this, and there were times that I think just about the time we made this film 5 or 6 years ago, that additional insurance that Ben was talking to me about, surprisingly, for that film, frankly, at that time, my brother and I, and even our accountant, thought, well, maybe yes, maybe no. I think we have enough. Fortunately, you know, inflation's been pretty good to us. Things did change, and that program fit in, and it was not very shortly afterwards that, no, we weren't overinsured. Again, we were underinsured. It's sort of the pendulum, there's peaks and valleys in this thing.
You're in the top 1% of insured people in the world. You've always found the premium. Do you treat it as a capital investment? Or?
Yes, we do. We regard the insurance to us as the same as a new building, a new tunnel kill, a new piece of equipment. We feel that in our situation as a privately held company with 2 owners, we have, as I said, several alternatives: sell the company, go public, or cover this thievery that we have coming down the road when Uncle Sam's going to come in when one of us goes. Ben's taking care of that.
Well, men that go along, you know, the men that made America what America is and what it's going to be are really people like you who started with little or nothing, and you put everything back in. And it wasn't only a man at work after a while. It was your credit line at work, it was your money at work, it was everything at work. And you grew. You had a lot of heartache along the way, and you stubbed your toe along the way, but you grew, and you grew, and you grew. And you know, you created a lot of jobs for a lot of people. And those people paid a lot of taxes. I don't know, maybe taxes are the price we pay for freedom. But the fact remains that the tax structure in this country tends to undo
half of what a man does. The tax structure can take from 1/3 to 2/3 of everything you own. And you can't take that much out without liquidating the estate.
You know, Ben, you agree with me that Pete represents the backbone of the free enterprise system in North America, and I know you're very, very American, and I wish you would share with us your visit with the Vice President Bush just last week.
That was a great experience. You know, I'm in the ceramic tile industry. Has a trade association. It's like the $1 Million Round Table, only not as big. It's called Tile Council of America. And last fall, the Carter, incidentally, this table, they warned us out there, you know, the Carter signed something on this over at the hotel, and don't lean on it because he ruined everything he touched. And made anyhow, the federal government went around the country forcing grants on anyone who would listen, anyone who would take, and of course left Reagan with a $20 billion unrecorded deficit. The Tile Council were one of the recipients because we have a import-sensitive industry. Now you hear automobiles screaming about 20%, 25%. We have 50%, 52% of our industry is now taken by the import products. So they gave us a grant, $300,000. That's peanuts, but to the Tile Council, that was a lot of money. Well, it evolved last fall and came up that really what the money was going to do was going to go to a lot of consultants who were going to come in and tell the tile industry what was wrong with them and how they could change and meet the import threat. Well, a few of us got a little bit heft. I particularly did. I felt it was ridiculous for us to spend our tax money that way. We said, the hell with them, we'll give it back. So, you know what? You can't give it back. That's the truth. So this thing goes to Secretary Baldrige, Secretary of Commerce. He thought it was great, but didn't know what to do. And he took it to the cabinet meeting, and Mr. President Reagan thought it was great. He said, invite those Jaspers down to the White House. So I got a nice trip, and we gave them back their money. And my only chance probably in a lifetime to get in the White House, I ended up in a Roosevelt room, but that's life. That was the first time in history that an industry group had returned a government grant, and we're proud of that.
Do you have any advice, Pete, for the young Ben Feldman? If you could turn the clock back 20 years, you're a younger businessman, 30 years, what advice would you give these people who call on people to keep this free enterprise system alive? Do you have any advice for these young lads?
I'm going to buy Ben's book.
That's good advice.
What else would you say, though? Pete, what else would you say?
No, I think that a young agent, young man in an insurance career, would be well advised to get to know their clients, as Ben has made it a point to know Fred and me, know their problem, learn their problem. Don't just sell insurance. Sell life, sell time, and as Ben says, sell dollars. I think there's a wonderful opportunity, and particularly unless there's a dramatic change in the tax structure in this country, as small companies do grow, and this gets even now, it's not only companies the size of mine, it's the family farm. It goes down, they're talking about some changes that may help alleviate this inheritance problem, but they're not going to look at all overnight. So I think a young insurance man has a great opportunity ahead of him to get to know his client, know their client's problem, and work with them.
Well, I opened this session by saying this was a close encounter. Well, I might add that this has been a close encounter of the best kind. And And I honestly feel, if God had ever sold life insurance or manufactured tile, he would have done it just the way you two fellows have. Thanks tremendously.
Thank you, Ron.